these built functional little porta potties, so to speak, these bathroom tents.
I know that you said at the higher elevations that once you're at a certain height, I think it was 17,000 feet, that you can't walk more than, 3,000 feet?
If you're not acclimated,
Yeah.
that's...
How many hours is 3,000 feet of walking, approximately?
Well, it just depends on the terrain, and because 3,000 feet could be many, many miles, or it could be a lot less. So it really depends. For example, base camp is 17,000 feet. Advanced base camp is 21,000 feet. But there's a good 16, 17 miles that separate the two.
Oh my God.
The terrain was just absolutely grueling. And so the first time we hiked from base camp to advanced base camp, we did it in 2 days. Some people now do it in 3 days. The second time, several weeks later, we did it in 1 day. And some people who are incredibly fit did it in 6 or 7 hours, which just blew me away. It took me about 10 or 11. So it's, yeah, how do I describe it? It was an incredibly wonderful, spectacular ordeal.
My God. What if people on the team weren't, let's say, as fast as you, or you said that you weren't as fast as somebody else who did something in 6 hours?
Yeah.
I mean, no one's left behind, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, when you're at base camp or at advanced base camp, there isn't a lot of, danger in that. Certainly you could, on the Tibetan side of Everest, there are ways to get lost and to get injured, of course. But, there are people on the trail. And so that's not so much a concern. It's when you get up higher, above advanced base camp, once you actually get on the mountain proper, the North Col. The North Col is, so advanced base camp is 21,000 feet, and then climbing up the North Col, you're on the mountain, and you've got fixed ropes and, crampons and ice axe. And that's a couple of 1,000-foot ascent on a glacier, basically. And you're at 23,000 feet at the North Col.
Oh, my God. And
then Camp 2 is a couple 1,000 feet higher, and Camp 3 is right around 27,500, 27,800 feet, or 28,000 feet. And then, of course, the summit is, 29,028 feet, basically. And so all of those levels take a little while to get to the first time around, as far as people will acclimate to the North Col, sleep there for a few days, maybe do a quick little trek up to partway up to Camp 2 and then back down, and then rest at advanced base camp, and then maybe go all the way back down to base camp, rest for several days, and then wait for a summit window when the satellite feeds that we get and the weather updates where we get say, hey, during this time there's going to be a several-day window of clear weather, because that's at that point the most important thing. Because if storms come when you're on the mountain high up, you can easily die. So then if a window appears, then you trek back up to advanced base camp, and then wait for that window to appear again, and then it comes up, and then you do your assault on the summit and go to North Col. And then the next day, go to Camp 2, and then the next day, go to Camp 3, and then pray that next day is going to be a clear day, and then make your summit attempt.
What you're describing reminds me of rainmaking. People think rainmaking is just forcing and making things happen and pushing. And a lot of the art of rainmaking is waiting on these openings, waiting on these windows, and then stepping through them, very much like you're describing being on Everest. If someone were to say, what would climbing Everest be like? The last thing I would think of is the waiting, because a lot of times the visual is just the climbing, but not the whole process. The organic process is waiting for those windows, acclimating, preparing, and then stepping through those windows. But it's so powerful what you're working with that if you don't do that, it's life and death.
Yes.
So really, nature teaches you that. What's it like to sleep climbing Everest? What are sleeping conditions like? What's the truth about it?
It's difficult. It's obviously cold. And, you're not... It's hard to get sleep. It's hard to sleep well. You're cold, you're tired, you're not under ideal conditions. It's, again, it's not a picnic. You wouldn't want to have your honeymoon there.
And how many people are there in a tent?
It depends where you are. At base camp and advanced base camp, everybody had their own tent. Higher up on the mountain, 2 to 3 people per tent. And that could be very cozy, in using the word cozy as a nice way of putting it, because you have all of your gear, and which is a lot. And it basically, if you're claustrophobic, that would be a bad thing. Yeah, you're pretty much cramped in there like sardines higher up on the mountain, especially if you've got 3 people in the tent.
Is it warmer?
Having an extra body, perhaps.
If you can deal with the other issues, right?
Yeah.
Did you sleep a full 8 hours? Did most people sleep 8 hours? Did they sleep longer or less?
You have a weird sleep. So it's, some people could sleep a full 8 hours. Some people could, would toss and turn and have difficulty sleeping and getting any kind of real good sleep. For me, I was kind of hit or miss. Sometimes I'd sleep okay, and sometimes I would be quite restless.
Because I can't imagine how people would function at that level of physical challenge of climbing Everest without getting sleep. I don't get it. How's that possible?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not a sprint. It's a marathon, basically.
The film has been seen in over 200 countries.
The website's been viewed in all over 200 countries.
Okay.
The film, I don't know how many countries the film has been seen in. Not enough. Still working on getting the international distribution out there. And the film basically chronicles the journey of these 9 peace climbers, but it really focuses on the 3 Middle Eastern climbers, Ali Bushnaq from Palestine, Dudu Yifrah from Israel, and Micha Yaniv from Israel. And it's not your typical film, as it starts off in the Middle East. Not your typical Everest film. It starts off in the Middle East, and I don't know of any other Everest film that does that. And really just follows these three individuals from their homes in the Middle East to Nepal, to Tibet, pretty much to the highest point on Earth. And without giving away what happened on the expedition, I guess I could just say that in many ways it was very successful. We had a couple of big scares, and the main scare was captured on film, and it's you can view that in the documentary. And I think, as I alluded to before, I got a few more gray hairs because of this.
I saw them, and the audience really needs to get the film and see it. This is the kind of film that you want to own, not just see.
And the whole idea about the expedition was to bring people together, to show that in an atmosphere of peace and through friendship and teamwork, that people can overcome their obstacles. They can overcome their religious, their societal, their own prejudices, and bond together and unite and work towards this common goal, and indeed accomplish anything. I mean, even climbing the tallest mountain in the world in the name of peace. And so that's really what I set out to do, is to show that people can